Vamos pro nosso ICC ligado. Okay, so good morning to everyone here at our VII journey, our 7th VII journey on behalf of the VII group from São Paulo University. We welcome you all for this wonderful morning here in São Paulo, Brazil, for our discussion on international humanitarian law and international criminal law. We would like to thank our sponsors and our supporters. Our sponsors, Ibrachina and Miguel Neto Advogados, and our supporters, LIDE China, Forum for Global Studies New Delhi, and SABYA from South Africa. We would like to extend our very kind regards to everyone who is watching us and our very dear lecturers. I would like to welcome Professor Gabriela Werner Oliveira and Professor Felipe Nicolau Pimentel Alamino, both dear friends for me. Both hold a PhD in international law from São Paulo University and have extensive research regarding international criminal law, international human rights, and perspective of minorities and vulnerable groups. Without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Gabriela Werner Oliveira first, so that she will discuss gender and international crimes, positive complementarity in Brazil, and then I will transfer to our dear friend Felipe Nicolau Alamino, who will discuss international humanitarian crisis and with focus on Russia, Ukraine, and then some touches regarding the Middle East. So please, Professor Gabriela Werner, you have the floor, and I will share the screen so that we will have the part.
Thank you, Professor Cassio. Let me start by saying what an honor it is to be here with you and Felipe, Professor Felipe, today. You're not only excellent researchers, but also very good friends. You know, Cassio, oysters have passed, we survived, and true friendships are forever. I would also like to thank the VIBRICS organization for the generous invitation, and of course, the audience for joining us in this conversation. I should warn you that I'm having some trouble with my Wi-Fi connection, so I'm using my mobile data. Please, Cassio, let me know if anything goes wrong. If it does, I sincerely apologize. Having cleared this out, let's move to the presentation. As you can see on the screen, I will talk about gender and international crimes, positive complementarity in Brazil. As we have a limited amount of time, my intention is to promote the debate on this subject within the BRICS. Bearing this in mind, my presentation will focus on 3 major issues. First, sexual and gender-based crimes in international law. Please, Cassio, you can move on to the next one. Second, the principle of complementarity in the International Criminal Court. And third, the positive complementarity in Brazil. So, first, I'd like to give you an overview of how sexual and gender-based crimes were recognized by international criminal law. Next one, Cassio, please. The first period we'll cover here is until the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Until this point, no explicit mention of rape or other sexual crimes was made in international instruments. Sexual crimes were treated as inevitable consequences of war, and women were treated like property. Add to this the fact that sexual crimes were seen as proof of masculinity and victory, a reward for the service and sacrifices made by soldiers. Regarding international criminal law specifically, neither the Nuremberg International Military Tribunal nor the International Military Tribunal for the Far East expressly included rape or any other sexual crimes within its charter. Both tribunals had jurisdiction over crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. In fact, the list of war crimes was non-exhaustive, and the crimes against humanity included the broad expression of other inhumane acts. So, of course, prosecutors could put sexual crimes under the umbrella of both crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, as to the Nuremberg Tribunal, there were no indictments of rape or any other sexual crime. It was too atrocious to prosecute. The Tokyo Tribunal, though, indicted some individuals for rape. For example, the conviction for war crimes and crimes against humanity concerning the occupation of Nanking was partly due to evidence of rapes committed by General Matsui's troops. Have you ever heard the expression, comfort women? I'm pretty sure you have. Due to the lack of explicit reference to sexual crime in international instruments, the 1949 Geneva Conventions can be seen as a turning point. Article 27, paragraph 2 of the Fourth Geneva Convention concerning the protection of civilians in time of war makes explicit mention of rape and forced prostitution and any other form of indecent assault. However, and this is a big however, you can see that I mentioned it's a turning point, but not so much. However, this provision aims to protect the honor. These crimes are considered an attack on the honor. If we read this paragraph together with the previous one, we can conclude that the protection is not only for the woman's honor, but also for the family and for the nation and the customs. Here, women's bodies are turned into a symbolic battlefield. By the way, sexual violence is not expressly included as a grave breach of the Geneva Conventions, Article 147, or in Article 3 common to the conventions. Remember, this is a post-World War II. We could hear fiery speeches about the barbaric facts that revolt the conscience of mankind. And yet, sexual violence was not considered a serious violation of the Geneva Conventions. We have a change in this scenario with the establishment of the ad hoc international criminal tribunals for Yugoslavia and Rwanda in the 90s. Both statutes explicitly include rape as a crime against humanity and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group as genocide. Also, the ICTR statute, which is interesting, lists rape and forced prostitution and any other form of indecent assault as outrageous upon personal dignity, constituting grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions. See, not an attack on honor, but outrageous upon personal dignity. Jurisprudentially, these tribunals took groundbreaking steps, but there is a lot to criticize as well. I won't enter details here because I would have to spend all morning on this topic alone. In my view, the International Criminal Court represents a new phase in the evolution of the treatment of sexual and gender-based crimes in international criminal law. Not only it is a permanent court, but also it was established by a treaty. Civil society played an essential role in the negotiations of the Rome Treaty. More than 200 organizations from all regions of the globe formed the Women's Caucus for Gender Justice. Many forms of sexual and gender-based crimes are listed in the Rome Statute. Article 6 on genocide lists imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Article 7 on crimes against humanity lists rape, sexual slavery, and forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, and forced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity, and also lists persecution on the grounds of gender. We can also add here the forced marriage as other inhumane acts. Article 8, regarding war crimes, lists rape, sexual slavery, and forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, and forced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence, also constituting a grave breach of the Geneva Conventions. But we must remember that the ICC is guided by the principle of complementarity. This principle can be found in the Rome Statute, both in its preamble and Article 1. It means that the ICC shall be complementary to national jurisdictions, and Article 17 of the statute regulates these issues of admissibility. There is a lot of debate and criticism surrounding this principle, especially regarding the political adoption of a sovereign model that can weaken the court. On the other hand, it is seen as a necessary ambiguity because it preserves universalism and sovereignty. It can be manifested through encouraging the harmonization of national legal systems with international standards. In other words, it brings the potential to be an instrument of social transformation. Here, I enter the topic that concerns Brazil, the positive complementarity in Brazil. It is worth remembering that recent research indicates that Brazil is a country built on the rape of indigenous and African women. Our criminal code dates back from the 40s. Until 2009, rape was considered a crime against customs, committed only through vaginal sex, and whose victim could only be a woman. As of 2009, rape is a crime against sexual dignity and liberty, committed not only through vaginal sex, but also by any other libidinous act against women or men. The justification for the legislative change expressly mentioned the inspiration in the Rome Statute. Other sexual crimes suffer modifications, but rape is the one that makes the explicit reference. This is an example of how national legislation can be inspired by international norms and reflect social transformation. Recently, here in Brazil, the debate surrounding the role of the court and the geopolitical imbalance caused by the lack of ratification or accession of the major powers, such as the US and China, has re-emerged. The court has also come into focus again due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and in recent weeks, the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Palestinian territory, especially the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. I believe Professor Alamino will talk more about that. We can expect politicians to discuss a possible withdrawal of the statute and to treat the court as another institution doomed to failure in face of real politics. It is predictable that politicians remain silent regarding the commission of crimes by other states. But it is unacceptable for us to adopt the superficial discourse, or worse, to turn a blind eye to the serious violations of human rights that are taking place in the most different regions of the globe. Of course, we need to discuss changes. The shift to a balance of powers will not be organic, but it will certainly not come with the denial of the validity of international standards, of international norms, of human rights, humanitarian law, and criminal law. On the contrary, it only benefits the powerful. The recognition of sexual and gender-based crimes was not an organic movement, was not out of generosity. It was the result of the struggle and the courage of many, many women. Make no mistake, we have already suffered the unimaginable. Nothing will silence us. I hope this brief talk can act as a springboard for discussion. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Werner Oliveira. It's always great to hear from you with your fact-based and very scientific approach to any issues and delicate issues, but at the same time, you're able to point the facts and the real politics, the real world behind many international law issues. Thank you very much, Professor. I will now send the microphone and the floor to our dear Professor Alamino. You have the floor, Felipe.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, you all. It's a pleasure to me to be here in the JBRICS discussion, which happens each and every year, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be invited once again. First of all, I'd like to thank JBRICS for the invitation, and moreover, I would like to thank to be here with fellow researchers such as Professor Cássio Zen and Professor Gabriela Werner Oliveira, which are, and it's most important thing, good friends of mine, and it's the most important thing in life, to work with good friends, more often than fellow researchers, good friends. Well, I must say that my paper, I would say, my discussion here today will not focus on answers, but on questions. I'm gonna bring some problems into light, and we're gonna discuss them a little bit, such as the two main wars that are raging nowadays, such as Ukrainian-Russian war and Israel-Hamas / Palestinian-Israel war in the Middle East. First of all, I'd like to pinpoint this both events with some discussions among international humanitarian law and the ICC as well with criminal crimes. In both scenarios, we have been facing some, how can I say it? We have been facing some crimes. I must put the correct word on it, such as the bombing of civilians and bombing of and targeting of non-military buildings. I shall be not incorrect, as I focused the other day, that hospitals, schools, and common houses are not, as far as I know, military issues. They are civilian issues. They are civilian complaints and may not be bombed, which is safeguarded since the 19th century with the first Geneva Conventions. So, focusing on it, I will only mention some of them, such as the bombardment of theaters in Ukraine, where DT children were inside, safeguarding for their lives and trying to refuse themselves from the rage of war, and schools, hospitals, such as the famous female hospital, and a lot of women, pregnant women, were giving birth to their children and were bombed during the process. What more? Schools, and as well from both sides, the bombardment of civilians. Some of them are caused because civilians are used as shields in order to bombard, to bomb the other party. There are some claims about the attacks from the eastern part of Ukraine that are made within civilian neighborhoods. So if you are attacking from civilian neighborhoods, you're using civilians as shields, which is banned from the laws of war, and it's considered itself as a crime of war. You cannot. It may sound a little bit odd or a little bit funny, but you know that you cannot use civilians as shields, isn't it? You cannot go on war with some kids and women and non-combatants in front of you in order to shield you from a counterattack. Even though it happened in the Ukrainian soil in both ways. We have some complaints about Russians doing that, and as well as Ukrainians. On the other side of it, on the other topic of it, we have the Israelo-Palestinian war, and on it we have several complaints about war crimes, and maybe it has to be investigated and it has to be discussed furthermore. Maybe there is a genocide on progress, as a former UN high professional in his retirement letter said there's a genocide going on. So we must focus on that, and we must discuss this and see if it is a crime against humanity, which would lead us to a complete assault against civilians and citizens in determined territory, or it's the Israel government / army is focusing on exterminate the Palestinians, which is strong and difficult to say, but it must be pointed out. In the Gaza Strip, we have seen bombardments of hospitals more than one, just to tell, because we had some great discussions about the hospital, the most famous hospital, which was bombed by the Gaza, the Hamas, or it was bombed by Israel. But nevertheless, we have 11 hospitals so far that were reached by missiles during the war. okay, that hospital in case was not bombed by the Israel war machine, but the other 10, and schools and houses and whole districts. This is a crime of war. This is clearly a crime of war, and the invention of, oh no, the Hamas is hiding behind the civilians in the Palestine Strip. Yes, it may be so. Nevertheless, you cannot bomb as well as you want. If you want to win a war, you cannot do the same as the enemy. You have rules in war, and the same. In the same moment, we have some politicians in Israel that say that the Gaza Strip has 2,500 million terrorists, which is the entire population of the Gaza Strip. So it's kind of difficult to analyze and accept this kind of discourse. Nevertheless, the most important thing that I must say here in this panoramic view of the conflict, of these conflicts, is that the P5, I must say, the permanent members of the Security Council of the UN are turning blind eyes on the issue, and sometimes they are playing like in a childish way, quarreling about which draft resolution I will veto or not. As we have a draft resolution from the US and a draft resolution from the Russian Federation and a draft resolution from Brazil, we had the P5, such as Russia and US more specifically, vetoing each other. Moreover than trying to finish the conflict and trying to achieve resolution. Well, sorry for saying resolution so many times, but trying to achieve the resolution of the conflict, trying to achieve peace, they are trying to, I must say, mock each other and quarrel like babies. Which draft will be, on the end of the day, the draft that will turn on a UN resolution, and not focusing on resolving the problem. On the other side, we have the same process going on in the Ukrainian battlefield, which, at least here in Brazil, is quite, how can I say it, forgotten by media and by researchers nowadays, as the Middle East issue was on the spotlight. There we have the world split on two, and we have the Westerns, I must say, focusing on helping in Ukraine, and Russia, Belarus, and China sometimes focusing on helping, of course, Russia. And none of the parties are trying to discuss peace, only trying to discuss the achievement of territories. And the aggression itself is not being discussed as it should be. It's important to remember that in both cases, the ICC may and shall act. Although the Ukraine, nor Russia, nor Ukraine are part of the ICC itself. Ukraine during 2014 has accepted the ICC jurisdiction in its territory about crimes committed in its territory, since the Euromaidan issue and the Crimea annexation. I don't know if you remember it. Nevertheless, almost 10 years from now, 10 years ago, we had these issues happening in Ukraine, and this is the seeds of the war that's raging today. As the Ukraine has assessed the ICC, each and every crime committed in its territory, that doesn't matter who, what is the nationality of the criminal, I must say, can be judged by the ICC, as was the case that President Putin and the minister Lavrov and the minister I don't remember the name now. Sorry, I just had. Cassio, do you remember the name?
I think it was the Minister for Children, Maria
Yes, exactly.
Belokova.
Lvova, yes. I was Lavrova, but Lavrov is the foreign minister. And I won't say that. I don't want to say that. So they were convicted by, not convicted, but they had a arrest warrant against them due to the conviction, the eviction of children from Ukraine to Russia itself. The same happens in Palestine territories. The Palestine Authority is a member of the ICC. However, we sometimes do not remember this because, unfortunately, the Palestine Authority is not a member of the UN itself. It's just an observer. Well, as it's a member of the ICC, it has it gives the ICC the opportunity to focus on crimes committed in its territories, such as the Gaza Strip and the Western Bank, which we call here in Brazil, Cisjordânia, or this part of the Jordan River, the West Bank of the Jordan River. If so, each and every crime committed in Palestine land can be judged by, can be investigated and judged by the ICC, which I must say that there is no victim nor aggressor on these cases. I'm trying here to say that not only Israel is committing crimes against the Palestinian civilians, but as well as Hamas committed crimes against the Israeli civilians and other foreigners that were partying and were living and were visiting places nearby the Gaza Strip on that terrible day 1 month ago. Both sides have complaints about which one is to blame for, but both committed war crimes. We cannot rape, we cannot kidnap, we cannot attack civilians. These all are banned from international law since, as I said, the Geneva Conventions, and are crimes against war crimes, and some, if in large scales, and can be called crimes against humanity. Nevertheless, I must say that none of these crimes are still on, how can I say it, are still on the spotlight, and the works trying to convict the perpetrators isn't as far-reaching as we would like to. Such as in the Ukraine soil, we had the use of cluster bombs, which are not accepted by international law. And in the Palestinian territories, we had the use of white phosphorus bombs, which is also a banned weapon. In both cases, we had more damage that was accepted for the combatants and for the civilians, as no damage is accepted for civilians. But we have still no clue about what will happen to the perpetrators of it. But I must say that the answer will be nothing. Nevertheless, we must keep on giving the spotlight to these atrocious and horrifying happenings in the Middle East and in Ukraine. And we as researchers, we as professors and technicians, I must say, we ought to give light to it and to give voice to this kind of crimes that are sometimes forgotten and we are obliged to use each and every space to pinpoint this and try to convince the others to stop it and how can I say it? Stop it and commit itself to the treaties that they once signed, if not the ICC itself, but the norms and customs of war. That's a panoramic view of the both scenarios that I would like to present to you today. And as I said, I didn't want to give some answers. Moreover, I just want to pinpoint some questions, and I would like to discuss further with you from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felipe. We are always saying that if we continue discussing, the three of us, we would be discussing for hours and hours and hours and hours, and we would end up making everyone leave YouTube out of basically tiring them out. But very, very important points, and both related to, I think both discussions are related to realpolitik and complementarity. If we think about the Middle East, of course, Israel is able to prosecute any individuals that could have committed crimes against Israeli citizens or people in Israel territory. At the same time, Ukraine, I believe Ukraine has already prosecuted individuals related to the war, and so at the same time as Russia could do it, and the Palestinian Authority, Palestine, could at the same time prosecute individuals accused of war crimes. And at the same time, it's interesting to link this with positive complementarity, because changes stemming from being a member of the ICC can change local laws, including, as Gabriela said, in Brazilian legislation, how much we have changed and how much we still need to change regarding gender-based violent crimes, and no longer crimes against customs, traditions, or against the honor of the men responsible for the women, as we had in the 40s. I will read some comments. There is one small question from Jorge saying about the issue and consider withdrawing from the Rome Statute. Could that be considered a link to the fragmentarity of international? Evandro also said, great panel, and people are giving compliments for the great interventions. I don't know if Gabriela would like to comment on the issue of withdrawing of Rome Statute.
Thank you. And the question was made by Jorge. I am correct, Cássio? I can't see the questions.
Yes.
So
from Jorge Freire on the comment.
Okay, thank you so much, Jorge, for your question. It's a great question. You can interpret this way, of course, but in this case, and especially in the Brazilian case concerning the speeches of President Lula, I believe it's more rhetoric than fragmentation of international law. And in some cases, you can put in discussion the knowledge of the institutions, the norms itself, and regarding the ICC, we have to remember that many people don't know that the ICC is an independent institution, is not linked, is not under the umbrella of the United Nations. So I think in this case, in our case, is more rhetoric than any other thing. I don't know if Felipe, Professor Alamino, I'm sorry, I'm so used to say Felipe and Cássio. So if Professors Alamino and Zain have something to say in this regard, but in the Brazilian case, it's more rhetoric than anything. But of course, there is a line of interpretation that could lead to this conclusion of fragmentation.
Does Professor Alamino would like to comment on the issue?
Yeah, personally, I don't believe in fragmentation of international law. Personally, for me personally, I don't believe in it. Nevertheless, I've enjoyed to hear the question posed by Jorge. It was very interesting to hear Professor Werner Oliveira, which is quite difficult to say Professor Zain, Professor Werner Oliveira. For me, saying it is quite bizarre, I must say, because we are close friends, and then to call ourselves professors kind odd. Still, as I said, I don't believe in fragmentation of international law, but the broadening of international law. And I must say that today we are facing a different aspect of it, which is not the fragmentation, but the vilifying of international law. As sometimes we see that UN umbrella, as Professor Werner Oliveira said, is under threat. The whole system is under threat, as we have both not systemic wars, but both wars that are in some way or other directed by the permanent members of the Security Council on it, and we have the freezing of the Security Council. Without these, I must say that as the ICC has its own process to finish investigations and to judge the cases, international law is seen by non-technicians, by the common people, as an insignificant tool, as an unimportant tool, such as what is the UN doing that the war in the Middle East or the war in Ukraine did not finish yet. Such questions posed by common people undermine the how can I say the image of the International Law Institute, and it's quite a threat for us as international law practitioners and researchers. So I must say that in the case posed by the question, it's more a rhetoric one than anything else. Nevertheless, it hides behind of it an atrocious issue, which is not the fragmentation, but the weaknesses of international law, not by itself, but as it's seen by common people.
I think, well, since Gabriela, and I am truly doing an effort to call you Professor Werner Oliveira and Professor Alamino, but I will call you Felipe and Gabriela as well, because, well, I think that after so many years of we keep on continuing, but I respect you as professors. Both of you are incredible researchers, and blah blah blah. We all know that, how much I do consider you incredible people. Regarding the the issue, because Professor Werner Oliveira told what is Cassio's take on that. My take is that maybe we should think, we always, in these moments of crisis and real politics regarding international criminal law, we do have, on one side, an idealistic approach, thinking, okay, international criminal law will solve every problem in the world. Now we have an environmental issue. Let us put a new crime on Rome Statute, and then, boom, magic. No more Amazon rainforest as well. It's fine. Every problem is solved because we put a new crime on the Rome Statute. It doesn't work like that. And anyone who knows about international law or international or criminal law knows that this is not how it works. And at the same time, we have real politics and realism on, okay, I don't like the Rome Statute, you're going to prosecute my president, said Sudan. Let us not forget about Sudan. They said, okay, you want to arrest our president al-Bashir? We are out of Rome Statute. We have signed, now we are unsigning the Rome Statute. It took some time, but finally al-Bashir is arrested. And now I believe he's facing charges nationally in Sudan, and probably he will face criminal charges there and will be punished in Sudan and not in the ICC. Let us see what the future reserves from us there. But it's at the same time, I remember once that Professor Casella told us once, okay, if we don't have international law, then what we will have? Okay, international law is violated daily. But at the same time, it is only violated because there is a norm, there is a rule. And eventually, you will have some sort of recognition, some sort of, okay, your country violated international law. Same thing with comfort women, to just get that hook that Professor Werner Oliveira told. Comfort women, finally, you are having some recognition that happened. But Japan, sometimes they said, oh, it was not that bad, or it was, no, we did not do that well, but it takes time. I think international law works, international criminal law especially, works slowly. We have one last question that was made by Ellen, our very dear GBRICS researcher. I think it was for Professor Felipe Alamino. In several declarations, BRICS countries have called...
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry?
Just add something.
Okay. Okay.
So regarding the possible Brazilian withdrawal, President Lula already took a step back and said, no, this must be negotiated between our diplomacy. We have to think about it. And, you know, it's not a discussion. So that is a rhetoric. And let's be honest. Since the United Nations creation in 1945, we are hearing about its failure, right? And the Cold War era, about the freezing of the Security Council between US and Russia. And we hear all the time. But for the millions of people that are fed every day by the United Nations, the UN works. For the millions of people that get medical aid, that get housing, that get the most basic survival tools, key tools, the UN works. So let's get practical here as well. We have to deal with states, but we have to deal with people. And for these people, the UN works. I just wanted to add this.
And if I can, I would add some words to what Professor Werner Oliveira said, which is, well, since 1945, we don't have a systemic war. We have, well, which doesn't help anything to the people that is in Ukraine, in some places in Africa nowadays, or in the Middle East. However, we don't have a world war raging against us. So the UN works. It has some fails here and there, but it works. And I would add one thing else, which is I must say that whoever is interested with the Nanking rape, the Japanese crimes in China during the Second World War, I would recommend you the book called The Nanking Rape by Iris Chang. Read it carefully because it has dark pages, is very tough. It's difficult to read, not because of the language, but because of the content. So with some advice, I must tell you to read it, but calmly and cheerfully.
So great recommendations for reading and for thought. The UN works, but unfortunately, it doesn't do everything, because I think it was Moreno Campo once who answering one question about the failures of international criminal law. They asked, why don't you prosecute some crimes? It was in Sri Lanka, the conflict in Sri Lanka. And basically what Moreno Campo told that day was, okay, we cannot do because Sri Lanka is not part of the ICC. And then they said, why does the United Nations Security Council doesn't refer that? And then Moreno Campo said, well, that's something that you have to figure out with the Security Council. It's not that the institution is problematic. Sometimes it's not that the United Nations are problematic, but sometimes the countries working within the United Nations have conflicting positions, and therefore they veto a Security Council resolution. This is something, a failure from the international community. And regarding these issues from the international community, we have one question from Ellen. I think it was posed to Felipe, but I think that we can all answer then. In several declarations, BRICS countries have called on the international community to support direct negotiations based on international law towards a two-state solution, leading to the establishment of sovereign, independent, and viable state of Palestine. However, some analysts agree that the two-state solution has been a diplomatic failure. Does the two-state solution still have a future?
Well, such a nice question, isn't it? Well, I personally agree on the two-state solution, but for the two-state solution to have a future, it must be agreed with the two states. If only the community agrees on this solution, we won't achieve any peace on the region. If the Palestinian Authority, and when I say the Palestinian Authority, I don't say only the Fatah, but unfortunately the Hamas too, and Israel, within the right-wing government that's governing Israel nowadays, both of them may and shall agree on the two-state resolution. If they don't agree, we will continue having the scavenging of pieces of land in the West Bank with colonization and with the dramatics. Sorry, lads. And the dramatic issues that are happening in the Gaza Strip. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for the considerations, Felipe. Do Gabriela has any takes on the issue that would like to share?
It's the million-dollar question right now. And what would be the alternative? You know, I don't think there is any. So yeah, I agree with Professor Alamino.
Well, my takes on that were, okay, what options do you have? I think that you both are completely right. We cannot simply just press one button and make Palestine disappear or Israel disappear. There are people living there. There are institutions there on both countries. And the thing is, when negotiating, they may find some common points, but I believe that by the end, they will say, okay, let us discuss Jerusalem. And then they will say, okay, well, everything that we have achieved so far on the negotiation of a possible two-state solution, well, the two-state solutions will require that my side will have Jerusalem. No, my side will have, and then everything will simply disappear, the idea of a negotiated solution. And if both sides don't agree, if all sides involved don't agree, it will not work. You cannot do simply a Security Council resolution saying, okay, this is how things will work. If Israel and Palestine do not agree, it will not work. There is no magic button, unfortunately. Any further questions from the audience? People are commenting that United Nations really has a part that works.
Sorry.
People are celebrating and are appreciating very much the lectures and
Sorry, Cassio.
every input that you.
Sorry, Cassio.
Okay.
As the problem of Jerusalem and the Jerusalem question, as we remember, the free city states are not a good answer to the problem, such as the international city of Jerusalem, what was tried to be put on as a resolution for the issue. It didn't answer the question, as well as the Danzig Gdansk Free State after the First World War. It wasn't a nice answering for a question of Germany and Poland, as we all remember what happened since the beginning of the Second World War. The first thing to do was to engulf the Danzig state. So free cities, but doesn't work. Well, San Marino, the Vatican City, and Singapore, it must work. But free cities in the long run, in the long run, they don't really work.
And I just want to remember that in 2015, the government of Palestine accepted the jurisdiction of the Rome Statute, then acceded the Rome Statute, including in the Palestinian territory, the east part of Jerusalem. So just to remember this.
Yes, I think law itself does not solve the issue. I think you need law and politics together, and you have, it's not simply any form of a treaty. Treaties are violated. Treaties, and so if you don't have political and societal support, because okay, governments can agree on something, but then what to do with groups, either in, let's say, Israel or Palestine, who doesn't agree with the deal? They will protest, they will go against, and the deal can fail there. We don't have any further questions from the audience, and we are reaching our final comments. I would like to give the floor back to you if you would like to make any point, any further vote of thanks or something, as we say in India. I think Felipe is...
Yeah, as we were saying, Professor Zen, I must remember Professor Koskaniemi's article on the duck rabbit drawing, which is very interesting because the duck rabbit is an idea that if you look on the picture from the right side, it's a duck. From the left side, it's a rabbit. So it's the same drawing, the same picture, but we can see in two ways. The issue here is a duck rabbit. We can see it as a politic question or an law question, and none of them answer it completely. So sometimes we are trying to understand these facts. We are trying to understand these issues using law lens. Nevertheless, with only law lens, the conflict continues. We have to resolve it from the politic point of view as well, which doesn't give much space for law sometimes. So this idea is very interesting for me. I always use it on classes, and I think that the approach of the questions in a political way, in a law way, it doesn't answer to the question, but it poses another point of view. Hello.
And sometimes, just sometimes, we have the perfect alignment between law and politics, and things work. So let's pray for that. And international law is not gimmick, so we need to keep working and keep believing. And I would like to once again congratulate GBRICS for this great event, the 7th year in a row of this great event. I would like to thank you, Professor Alamino, Professor Zane, and the qualified audience here today, the great questions and the great discussions we had. It was a delight being here with you today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, again, I would like to thank the audience. Without you, we wouldn't be here today talking about these issues, these difficult moments that we are facing on international law and in the world nowadays. And to thank the GBRICS of the University of São Paulo in name of Professor Cássio Zen for the seventh event in a row, which shows us the strength of GBRICS and the fortitude of its intentions. And last but not least, I would like to thank my friend and fellow researcher, Professor Gabriela Werner Oliveira, for sharing this table with me today. And that's it. Thank you all.
Well, thank you both, dear friends, for this incredible discussion that we have this morning. And I am now officially closing the roundtable, and I am inviting everyone to watch our next panel. It will be 6 p.m. Brazilian time on multilateralism. So I think it will kind of continue some of the discussions that we have kind of poked around today, this morning. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you later. Bye-bye.